trigger happy and I give less than a fuck. Love me or hate me, I'ma show enough, rip shit up. It's Mr. Nothing, nice on a mic stand. Mic in the left and the zest in my right hand. I took a puff, had enough now, hold up. If that was Indo, niggas getting rolled up. Yo.
How's it going, YouTube? This is Acid Root, so I'm going to review NF's most recent project, Clouds. So this is a mixtape, and this was after his 2019 album, The Search. And this is a different kind of approach than like NF had on The Search and then his 2017 album that I reviewed, Perception. That was kind of a sleeper album, kind of had some low-key kind of sleeper singles like No Lie or Lie and Let You Down, and maybe like one or two that kind of low-key charted that I don't remember. But this was kind of a project. The thing about NF is he basically has mastered the style that Eminem had on Recovery, and he's really fit for radio. I mean, a lot of the time you'll hear this guy and he's real calm, real basic, you know, just gets the serviceable singles, you hear them, kind of makeshift topics, and then, you know, they phase out as the album rollout kind of phases out, and that's kind of what's happened. I have not heard his 2019 album, The Search, but I assume that that's kind of more of the same, just the same. I know it had like 3 or 4 singles off of it, and Perception that I reviewed last year had like 2 singles at least. I want to say that there was at least a 3rd single that was kind of on my local radio around these parts, but I definitely remember hearing Lie and Let You Down. So I was interested. I mean, it was right around this time NF dropped Clouds right as I was starting to mess with Perception, and I thought, okay, I like the album cover. Maybe this could be more of the same in that same vein. As a bonus, NF got some guest features from Hopsin and Tech Nine, so I thought that really had me excited, but I gave it some time. I said, you know, I'm going to wait, I'm going to digest Perception a little bit, get back to it later. The unfortunate thing about this project is it's not as stellar as like I would have liked it to be. Really, the NF that is off Perception is really almost nowhere to be found, and he tries like some different styles that really don't suit him. Most of the complaints, I remember my complaints about Perception was when he did trap and when he did more upbeat stuff that wasn't radio ready. I mean, I know NF might get bored of like the more kind of makeshift and just kind of workaday type songs that he did with like Let You Down and stuff, but that really, I mean, the guy is kind of in like an awkward position because he has not quite been able to flesh out how to do these songs with much flair, and he tries. I mean, this is kind of the situation. The singles are not songs like Lie and Let You Down or some of the ones off The Search. They are more like kind of trap radio. Like if there was ever trap music that you've heard from like Future, Gunna, Young Thug, Migos, those type people, this would be some of those singles where it kind of has like trap influence, but it's service to radio in terms of like makeshift and kind of pop music, pop radio. I mean, you're going to be hearing this with like people like Katy Perry and Adele and folks like that, Rihanna, those type people. So it doesn't mix. I'm just going to say right off the bat, it doesn't mix. And I was humongously disappointed because throughout this project, it's relatively short, but not Hobson, but NF does a pretty terrible job of selecting production. I'm just going to full blown say that he is complete suckage when it comes to picking out almost anything that looks captivating on this project. He does a terrible job. And like I figured, his best strength is when he does radio songs like he did on Perception and The Search. And so he tries trap, he tries like a multitude of things that just completely don't work and really kind of waste not only his time, but our time, and don't really pull off these sorts of things. So just to have a list, I mean, and another thing about this is just the fact that he's really not too, he's not too much of a captivating songwriter. I mean, he can make songs, but it's never the topic that comes off as interesting. I know in a lot of ways he's evolving upon the sound that Eminem did on Recovery, but the problem with it is these topics just don't have the layers together. And on top of that, to compound that and make the situation even worse, most of the song titles on this album or mixtape are just one word, which I really like. Kendrick Lamar did that on his 2017 album Damn, and I really don't like when song titles just have one word for them because they're not descript and they just don't have the um versatility and really enough like uh fluidness, vibrancy. That's the word I'm looking for. They don't have the vibrancy to really captivate you to want to interest them. Like layers, don't know what that's about, don't care. Story, I guess that's going to be a story. Clouds, well, that's the name of the. You just would think that some of these prideful. I mean, some of these don't really have much of any spark to them to say, oh, like Drake's 3 a.m. in Toronto or something like that, or something that jumps off the page, Tupac's All Eyes on Me, that you can sit there and say, yes, I'm going to mess with this project or this song. And it's kind of, it's, I mean, NF has some strengths. Like his strengths happen to be like he is a decent lyricist and he knows how to make radio ready songs when he tries to do it, but he kind of steered clear of that on this album. So to talk about like some of the singles, basically all three of the singles sound the same. So Paid My Dues, Clouds, and Lost. All three of these have a very similar production on here, and they all have the same approach, the same type of sound. And something that Hopsin really does on this album that I wasn't too big a fan of is he's pretty noisy. He picks up like these orchestra type beats and then feels the need to kind of shout on them, and it just is not very synchronized with how you would think that music would kind of turn out. And I mean, it's fine for him to try to break his mold as far as making sure he's not shoehorned into just doing like tap water radio and stuff, but I kind of look after it and it's like this trap trying to be noisy, kind of like a Gunna type stuff really doesn't suit like his personality, and it just kind of the mixture behind it is awkward. That's the best, one of the better words I could say for it is it's awkward, and it kind of feels, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and by that I mean it sticks out in a bad way if you're not fluent in that kind of expression. But so all of these singles, I did at least somewhat like Clouds. I kind of liked how it kind of had, I felt like that could have probably been the best radio single here, just the way it kind of had like a tiptoeing, creeping kind of production. But in the middle of the second verse, it kind of turns into like a real kind of uh horror show kind of. It sounds like you're at like an opera or something, some real orchestra backing this, and it just turns into like a round of terror. And I know because the song is called Clouds that this is the point where the clouds start to have like a thunderstorm or something. But the mixture behind it, I felt like he had a decent radio song if he wouldn't have shouted and stomped all over the chorus and done something and had a little bit more finesse with it, which is, I mean, these singles truly lack finesse and they don't have like what he needs to, and he has a horrid beat selection, and really what he's just better at is he should have just made like a cache of records like he had on Perception and The Search. It's really kind of a gigantic disappointment because there's so much wasted opportunity. But luckily this type trap type stuff, like he does a lot of this shouting and stomping on Story, and he does it on That's a Joke and Clouds and Paid My Dues. But it's simply not, in my opinion, not a very interesting style, because I know he's trying to flesh out some more strengths for him, but he really has a lot, like the trap that he has needs work. And at least the trap musicians that I've heard from like Young Thug or something, at least they can pick production that is actually something you want to bump in your whip or something like that. Something that kind of has like I mean, I feel like NF needs a better ear for melody and thinks, okay, I want to nod my head to this, and I want to cruise around to this, and I want to dance to this even. This is not really dance music, which is another thing. He's not too much of like a recreational sort where he kind of chooses like the more ruminating type stuff that Eminem does on Recovery. It's not like Eminem show ruminating as more as it is Recovery ruminating, which he's okay at, but he really does not, he's not a drug user for what I know, and he really is not, he you know, his stories with women are not quite as captivating as like Eminem with Kim and stuff. So there's really not an overabundance of stuff that really makes him jump off the page as far as trying to pull off Eminem's recovery style, unless it's something for radio that you're going to hear on the way home from work. So that's kind of what I've noticed about it. So I'll go ahead and recommend to you the 4 songs out of 11 that I enjoyed. So they would be Just Like You, Trust with Tech Nine, Drifting, and then Clouds. So to talk, Just Like You is the closest to like the Perception NF that I know. I mean, really, this song type is kind of more him saying that like, you know, I go through problems also, but that's vintage NF there. I felt like he did a nice sing-songy hook. Like he should have had more beats like, or more songs like this. I bet you some of these would have charted a lot better if he would have tried something like this. Maybe he was trying something different, but this was one of the better songs. Definitely felt like vintage NF. Trust with Tech Nine. I'm glad that NF decided, I mean, to talk about the fact that he has guests for a change, which is definitely good. And I like his guest selections. This was probably the best beat on this project. I'd have to say that this was probably the best beat. It really had like a horrific, I mean, for NF to kind of do horrorcore, it just felt like a real kind of opera where it just gets thunderous and, you know, kind of riveting and that type stuff. It doesn't really feel like normal rap music, but it just kind of has like a more, like I said, woodwork or orchestral kind of riveting type production. Tech Nine suits it very well. You'll notice that neither of them use cuss words. That's kind of the thing. They keep it clean despite the fact that they are kind of furious in here, and they both rap quickly. NF keeps up with Tech Nine. I felt like this was good delivery on here, and this is probably the best, like I said, the best beat on the whole project. Drifting sounded like a Spotify song. This was more of like a playlist and streaming type music. Almost felt like R&B, but just not quite. This was another one that's kind of in his Perception style, kind of like Just Like You. I think that this was at least an interesting topic. I definitely like the song title as far as what I was seeing with it. And I'm going to have to listen more thoroughly to the lyrics to see how captivating it truly is. And then Clouds is an almost song. I said that I had 4 songs out of 11 I liked, but I really only have 3.5. I would have to give Clouds as an almost song, where it's a song I'm kind of on the fence about, where if I wind up liking this song, my score for the album could go up, but right now I'm just kind of with it, because I like the first 2 verses, or I like the first verse and a half of Clouds, especially the edit, but I really felt like when it started getting more vicious and kind of thunderous, you know, to stay in lieu with that Clouds sentiment, you know, it kind of was starting to lose me a bit, because it just felt like he was trying to bring the drama and bring like a more menacing type feel, which it feels just out of his character to do that, especially if he's not going to use cuss words and be more, you know, kind of imposing, I guess, in a vicious sort. But it's just kind of, it's strange to kind of describe, but I would have to say that him being more annoyed more so than furious. He's not quite at the point where, like, you know, when Eminem and Hopsin and, you know, Tech Nine and some of those people got mad, but it's kind of I would have to say that like the first half of the song suits him more than like the second half, where he kind of tries to do like a Meek Mill Dreams and Nightmares type thing, where the song transforms into like this furious kind of showing, but he really doesn't come off to me as much of an angry rapper. It's not quite as believable or quite as sound as like it probably would need to be, and I think that's kind of the main thing there. So I felt like in the beginning Clouds came off as a decent single, something that was new and inventive and innovative, but it just didn't wind up being that with the way it turned out, because I don't know how radio songs that switch up the beat midway through really work on the radio. I feel like it's you know, it's never been a trend that I've liked. But yeah, so this album's score out of 10, I'm gonna just give it a 3.5. The 4 songs that I liked, I feel like I don't think me having that 4th song, Clouds, would really change the score very much. And it's still, I don't really like the Clouds that's not the edit, so I just would have to say that that's still only 4 out of 11, which is less than, you know, half the project and just a little, approximately a third. So I'm just wasn't really digging that too much. There's not enough here. Like I said, NF really does a terrible job of selecting beats. He doesn't cuss. He doesn't have interesting song topics and personality, and he doesn't have that addictive a personality. I feel like he really has the Eminem recovery style down, but it's just minimized here and he doesn't show it off. So it's just it's a wasted opportunity for him not to convey to his strengths and try things that make him look kind of more awkward and just more noisy and there's a word I'm looking for, just cumbersome than he probably very much needs to. So that's kind of the thing there. The social score I'll give like a 4 out of 10 just because there were 3 singles with music videos, but they're all kind of plotting and just overall clumsy. Just really didn't like the approach and the overall like panache to this project, I definitely have to say. So